Welcome in to the Rock Talk Studio, the podcast that turns you on to new rock and roll books and documentaries. My name's Big Rick. I do the watching, I do the reading, and I gladly do all the digging so you don't have to waste your time when it comes to looking for that next great rock and roll book or documentary to check out. And today we're going to take a look at a documentary of one of the greatest solo careers after an artist has left one of the greatest bands of all time. And today I'm going to dig into a new documentary that just came out, Paul McCartney, Man on the Run. And right off the bat, first scene, Paul is talking about the breakup of the Beatles. And I remember thinking, no, wait a minute. I thought this was a McCartney documentary about the solo years, about Wings. That's how it was billed. That's how it was positioned, right? So what is this? The answer, and I'm glad to say, is both. You can't really tell this story without paying attention and addressing what was going on with Paul and the Beatles during that whole time. So I am really glad they didn't steer away from it. They actually leaned into it, and the way the director, Morgan Neville, interjected how Paul's life and solo career were entwined with the Beatles really worked, was really cool. Especially this opening scene. He created this opening scene. It's like a montage that spins through the history of the Beatles. A lot of quick cuts. There's animation in there, pasted images over pictures and video. And it really sets the stage for what Paul was not only thinking about, but dealing with when the Beatles stopped working together. Because when the Beatles split up, Paul wasn't just starting a new band. He was trying to figure out who he was without the biggest band in the world behind him. And that's the story this film really wants to tell. But I want to go right to the best thing about this doc because it carries through the whole piece and really makes this documentary worth checking out and really sets it apart, I think, in a lot of ways. And that is Paul's participation in this. The way that the director, Morgan Neville, smartly used just audio to tell the story. So there's no talking heads popping up. There's no journalists, but it's just voiceovers, mainly from Paul. And he gave this really personal view of how he was dealing with everything in his life, his family, his music, where he was living at the time. And because it's in his voice telling it, you don't just understand it, you really feel it. The film covers from right after the breakup of the Beatles to John Lennon's death, mainly Paul in the 70s, and it uses archival footage from Paul's own collection of personal family videos. And that is another thing that I wanted to point out that really stands out about this documentary, and that's the shots and video of Linda and him in this beat-up farmhouse where he went to clear his head after the Beatles. And it was pretty amazing, very intimate, really private look at how difficult this time was for him. He was drinking too much, and Paul even tells about not being able or wanting to play music for an extended period of time when he was on the farm, just kind of raising his family and raising a bunch of animals. But once he got his mojo back, the doc carries us through the formation of his band Wings and the different versions of that band. And there are long, really uncut stretches of live performances that are really great in here, really good footage. There's a lot of raw studio stuff, different rehearsals, different versions of the band, different locations. And because this was a period of rebuilding, Wings wasn't truly formed at all. So you get to see how it grew, you get to see the trial, and you get to see the error. When I was watching this doc, it made me think about Paul's solo career, but it made me think, what was the greatest transition from band member to solo artist in the history of rock and roll? I mean, it's hard to top the band that Paul was coming out of, the Beatles. So there are a few names that come up when you think of successful solo careers to me. And first one is Ozzy. That one really stands out. I mean, huge solo career after Sabbath broke up. He had some of his biggest hits, if not his biggest hits with Crazy Train, I think. Is that Ozzy's most popular song? It just might be. And then you have, of course, Robert Plant. I really like those first couple of Plant solo records with Robbie Blunt on guitar. And he didn't commercially reach the levels of McCartney or Ozzy, definitely not. But he did a good job for himself, and he still had a long career, still has a long career going as a solo artist. Sting is another one. There's a guy who had a huge solo career, sold a bunch of records after he left the Police. But it was just interesting to look at McCartney's struggles and how he was able to overcome them, and how this documentary, using his voice and all this really personal, intimate video, kind of laid out how he was able to do it. Along with Paul trying to figure out who he was after the Beatles and building this new band, the documentary also does something kind of quietly, and it doesn't really make this the forefront of the doc, but it's a layer of the doc that really worked. It tells the story of his relationship with Linda. I mean, before she met Paul, Linda was already a respected photographer, but once she joined Wings, she was often really dismissed by the press and jealous fans, even some of Paul's peers, as someone who just really didn't belong in the band. And you get to see how they were able to juggle that. I mean, there's a lot of really good reflections from Paul and Linda and their kids and some of the friends who were around them. There's also contributions I want to mention here from Nick Lowe. Chrissy Hyde is in here, former Wings member contribute. And to me, the best contribution to this is from Sean Ono Lennon. He provides some really great perspective about Paul and his friendship with his dad, John Lennon. Really good stuff. But the film does show how important Linda really was to Paul and to the family and to the life that they built together. And at its core, it's pretty simple. And she says this when she's asked in the documentary why she's there. She says she's there because they love each other. Listening to Paul talk about it now, you can hear the perspective that comes with time. He looks back on the years with a little more understanding. He finds value in things that were heavily criticized at that time. For him, it was a period of real exploitation, even while a lot of people were pushing back up against it. And you get to see all that in this really great new doc, Man on the Run. Man on the Run runs a little over 2 hours. Our first great rock and roll documentary of the year is out, and this is it. Don't miss it. If you've been listening to the show for a while, thank you. And you know that I like to turn you on to different things. If it's your first time in, also thank you. I hope you're enjoying it. But I like to turn you on to other things in rock and roll world. So newsletters, podcasts, websites, whatever it may be that I feel is going to add value to you. And I want to tell you a little bit about a new podcast I was checking out. It's called Gig Gab, and it's labeled as the show for working musicians. It's a fascinating and entertaining look at behind the scenes of what it takes to put a live band on stage. It's hosted by Dave Hamilton, and Dave discusses everything from booking gigs, getting paid, and working with the crowd, prepping bands, learning the material, and managing all the different personalities involved. And while the show is said to be for musicians, a surprisingly sizable chunk of their audience are music fans who just love hearing about how the sausage is made. So if you're into the fan of live music, playing it or watching it be played, which I know that you are, be sure to check out Gig Gab. You can find it at giggabpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, like wherever you're listening today, check them out, Gig Gab. Before we wrap up today, I want to mention one other thing about Paul McCartney and Wings. There's a book that came out called The Story of a Band on the Run, and it's an in-depth oral history of what we're looking at here in this documentary. It draws on interviews from McCartney, different band members, family, others close to him during this time, very similar to what this documentary is like, but this one is deep. This one is 528 pages. It's a big one, and it's really rich in quotes. There's a ton of photos, a ton of behind-the-scenes stories and memories. I really like this book a lot. I would caution you, though, it's probably only for your real Beatles fans because there's a lot to it. And like I mentioned, 528 pages is an investment indeed. But I did want to mention it. If you get a chance to check out this documentary, Man on the Run, and you like it, if you want more, there was a cool book that came out last year called Wings, The Story of a Band on the Run. Next week's show, going to do something a little bit different. Going to do a 2-for-1. I'm going to do a book and a documentary from two of the all-time greatest bands. We've got the Rolling Stones and we got Black Sabbath. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love talking rock and roll. That's what this show is all about. When I find something good that I read or I see or that I checked out, I just can't wait to talk about it. And I'm really glad I get a chance to talk about this cool doc, Man on the Run. All right, let's tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. I'll catch you next time in the Rock Talk studio.